What's going on, vinyl community? Welcome to another video with the Record Spinner. In today's video, I will be doing something completely different and surely a first for the channel. I am going to be doing an analysis of the Beatles Red and Blue albums. This analysis will go into the backstory of these albums, the track lists, notable vinyl pressings, and other factoids to be known. So anyways, enough of the chit chat, let's jump into what this video is all about. So the question is, why did we get these albums back in April of 1973 when they first came out? These albums were released as a response to a bootleg release which came out right around 1972 called Alpha Omega, which was being sold via mail order on television. These were 4 LP sets that were not in any way a greatest hits collection, but it was merely a collection of Beatles and solo Beatles songs. Now here is where it gets interesting, and since I am a music business major, this was a very intriguing story. Before 1972, sound recordings were not subject to federal copyright until the Sound Recording Amendment of 1971, where basically any recording that was made before the amendment's effective date would be subjected to state or common law copyright. Now, the company that put out these Alpha Omega collections was one called Audio Tape Incorporated, which was based out of New Jersey, home state, which was where the laws were a bit subdued to where these collections could be sold via mail order. Now, keep in mind, this was at a time where Capitol wasn't churning out the bucket loads of Beatles compilations we would see in the later half of the 70s. So Alpha Omega was a first of its kind, and there was certainly a demand for it. Now, everything came to a head in February of 1973, where Beatles manager Alan Klein, on behalf of George Harrison, Apple Records, and Capitol Records, filed a lawsuit against Audio Tape and the various affiliates who ran TV ads for $15 million. Now, it is unknown how the case was settled, but it was essentially a cease and desist order, and apparently the Beatles received $19 million worth of royalties. So once that was all said and done, Capitol and Apple went ahead and released these 2 compilations, and due to the effect that Alpha Omega had on the buying public, these compilations were marketed as being the only authorized collection of the Beatles. Right off the bat, we have 1962 to 1966, otherwise known as the Red Album, which basically covers the Beatlemania years. And then we have 1967 to 1970, otherwise known as the Blue Album, which covers the period where the band retired from the road and focused primarily in the studio and broadened their sound palette. The artwork of these compilations include photos of the band that were taken at the stairwell at EMI's London headquarters. The one for the Red Album is an outtake from the photo sessions that would give forth the album cover for Please Please Me. And then for the Blue Album, we essentially have a recreation of that famous photo session taken in 1969. This photo was intended to provide a cover photo for the planned Get Back album, which evolved into Let It Be. The gatefolds include a photo from the Mad Day Out photo session from 1968 with respective red and blue tinges to the photos. The records came housed in printed inner sleeves which included song lyrics, and of course the center labels included the full apple on the first side and the apple cut in half on the other with the respected red and blue color background. The track lists for both of these albums were compiled by Alan Klein, and I'm going to very quickly, to the best of my abilities, showcase where each song came from in terms of their album and single discography within the UK. So, for the Red Album, we have Love Me Do and Please Please Me, the band's first 2 singles, which can also be found on their first album, Please Please Me. Then we have From Me to You, She Loves You, and I Want to Hold Your Hand, all non-album singles. Then we have All My Loving from With the Beatles. And then we have Can't Buy Me Love, Hard Day's Night, and I Love Her, all of which come off of the Hard Day's Night album. And I should mention that Can't Buy Me Love and Hard Day's Night were both released as singles. Then we have 8 Days a Week from Beatles for Sale. Then we have I Feel Fine, single. And then we have Ticket to Ride, Yesterday, Help, and You've Gotta Hide Your Love Away, all of which come off of the Help album. And I should mention Ticket to Ride and Help were released as singles. And then we have We Can Work It Out and Day Tripper, all of which come off of the double A side non-album single. And then we have Drive My Car, Norwegian Wood, Nowhere Man, Michelle, In My Life, In Girl, all of which appear on Rubber Soul. Rubber Soul has a big emphasis on the Red album. Paperback Writer, non-album single. And then we have Eleanor Rigby and Yellow Submarine, all of which do appear on Revolver, as well as a double A side single. So that is for the Red album. Now let's get to the Blue album. Starting off with Strawberry Fields Forever and Penny Lane, double A side single. And then we have Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, With a Little Help from My Friends, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and A Day in the Life. Of course, all of which come off of the monumental Sgt. Pepper album. Then we have All You Need Is Love, non-album single. And then we have I Am the Walrus and Hello Goodbye, both of which do appear on this single. Hello Goodbye was the A side. I Am the Walrus was the B side. I Am the Walrus, Fool on the Hill, and Magical Mystery Tour appear on the Magical Mystery Tour double EP, which came out in the UK. And I should mention that all of the non-album singles and EP tracks that I mentioned so far for the Blue album do indeed appear on the American Magical Mystery Tour album. Then up next we have Lady Madonna, non-album single. Hey Jude and Revolution, non-album single, both the A and B side. And then we have Back in the USSR, While My Guitar Gently Weeps, and Obla Di Obla Da. Comes from the White Album. And then we have Get Back and Don't Let Me Down, both the A and B side, non-album single. Ballad of Johnny and Yoko and Old Brown Shoe, A and B side, non-album single. And then we have Here Comes the Sun, Come Together, Something, Octopus's Garden, all of which come off of Abbey Road. And I should mention that Come Together and Something were released as a double A side single. Then we have Let It Be, the single version, non-album single. And then to round this all off, we have Across the Universe and Long and Winding Road, all of which appear on the Let It Be album. And it should be mentioned that any non-album single that has not appeared on any album that I mentioned can easily be found on the Past Masters compilation. Now, here is where we get into a bit of minutia that some people like to point out, some simply don't care. Honestly, it's very complex to explain, so I will keep it very simple. If you want the full details, you can go on Wikipedia and read it for yourself. This is specifically for the Red album. Between the original US and UK pressings of the Red album, there were many different mixes and versions used, such as fake stereo or duophonic stereo, as the labels would like to call it, where basically you take a mono track, put the treble on one side, put the bass on the other. It was very wonky sounding. Re-EQ'd mono mixes, stereo mixes where the channels were switched, whispering intros from the UK, James Bond themes in the US. It was kind of a mess how they assembled it with all these various mixes. When the albums were released on CD in 1993 and 2010, the tracks Love Me Do, Please Please Me, From Me to You, and She Loves You, they used the original mono mixes, but for all of the tracks that were off of Help and Rubber Soul, they used the 1987 George Martin stereo remixes. Everything else was in stereo. Thank God the Blue album only utilized stereo mixes and nothing crazy like the Red album. Let's talk about some notable vinyl pressings. Of course, they're the original US and UK pressings. The color scheme of these albums do scream color vinyl variant, and so Capitol did release red and blue vinyl versions of these albums in the US back in 1978, and then Parlophone followed suit in the UK in 1979, and then in 2014, we got vinyl reissues of these albums, and these sound absolutely fantastic. These were mastered by Sean McGee at Abbey Road, and it's been said that they were pressed over at Quality Record Pressings, but on my copies, according to the Dead Wax, it looks like they were pressed over at Record Industry in the Netherlands. Now, here is the big draw with these reissues. All analog mastering. Sean used the original tapes that were used to produce these albums back in 1973, with a few exceptions. Like I mentioned, the recent CD versions included the first 4 tracks of the Red album in mono, and that followed suit with these new pressings, which used mono mixes, but utilizing the EQ from the Beatles in mono box set. And of course, like I said, he used the original tapes, which means we are hearing the original stereo mixes of the tracks off of Help and Rubber Soul, which now have been kind of replaced by the 1987 George Martin remixes. Sean also followed all of the mastering notes from mastering engineer Harry Moss, and to add a bit of uniqueness to these reissues, these came with new inserts with photos and a brief history of the time frame from for each compilation, which are absolutely awesome. Overall, my verdict on these 2 compilations are that they are fantastic prime releases for anyone who is intrigued with the Fab Four, or for someone who simply wants a concise collection of the highlights from this band's career. Now, compilations can never be perfect because there's always songs that people think should have been included, songs that don't deserve to be included. Honestly, I think maybe some covers such as Twist and Shout and Long Tall Sally could have been cool inclusions on the Red album, since they were live staples of the band's live set back when they performed live. I think it's a crime that Revolver got represented, and even though Rubber Soul is my favorite Beatles album, and there was a good hunk of tracks included from that album, some could have been eliminated in favor of things such as Taxman or Tomorrow Never Knows. I think the Blue album does a great job with focusing in on the singles, the album cuts, but going as far as including single B-sides with things such as Old Brown Shoe, which tend to go into deep cut territory, but it offers a bit more of an in-depth look at the time frame. Keep in mind, these were created in the vinyl age, so you only had so much to work with in terms of how much you can fit on the side of an LP. Keeping it concise with the 2 LP formula was smart, since anything beyond that would have gone into like box set territory. Perhaps if this was made with the CD in mind, it would be a different animal, but overall, these are 2 great starter packs for any new Beatles fan or one that simply wants an anthology. So there you guys go. That is my analysis of the Beatles Red and Blue albums. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, as I do have plans on doing more videos of this sort in the future. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and if you want to support this channel, be sure to check me out on Patreon. See you guys in the next video, and most importantly, keep the records spinning.